The return journey to Station Kepler felt like a dream. Day sat in the transport ship, still wearing his damaged environmental suit, watching the rescued hostages receive medical attention. The mission had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. All hostages were safe, the terrorists were captured, and no one on the rescue team had been seriously injured. But the real shock came when they docked at the academy. Word of the rescue had already spread throughout the station. As Day, Jin, and Hana walked through the corridors, other cadets stopped to stare at them with expressions ranging from amazement to disbelief. "Is it true?" asked Vel9, the brilliant Nexari student. "You three actually infiltrated a terrorist-controlled station and freed over 300 hostages?" "We did what needed to be done," Hana replied simply, though Day could see the pride in her eyes. The formal debriefing took place in the main conference room. Commander Velthara and the other senior instructors listened as the three cadets described their mission in detail. When Day explained how he had used harmonic resonance against the Vorthak guards, several alien instructors exchanged surprised looks. "That technique requires advanced understanding of crystalline physiology, Commander," Velthara observed. "Where did you learn such specialized knowledge?" "I studied the Academy's xenobiology databases," Day answered carefully. "I wanted to understand how different species might react in combat situations." It was another technically true response, though it left out the crucial detail of who had taught him to apply that knowledge practically. After the debriefing, Day found himself surrounded by cadets who had previously ignored or dismissed him. Kethmore, the Vorthak prince who had often mocked human capabilities, approached with obvious reluctance. "Your tactics against Krexthul were effective," the prince admitted grudgingly. "I did not expect a human to understand Vorthak vulnerabilities so thoroughly." "Every species has strengths and weaknesses," Day replied diplomatically. "Success comes from understanding both." Over the following days, everything changed at the academy. Day's combat simulation scores, which had been climbing gradually, suddenly placed him near the top of his class. Instructors who had previously viewed him as a marginal student began paying attention to his insights and suggestions. More importantly, the attitude toward humans in general began to shift. Jin and Hana, emboldened by their success, stopped trying to blend in with alien expectations and started embracing their own heritage. Other human cadets throughout the academy heard about the rescue and began carrying themselves with more confidence. "It's remarkable," Keeper Loth, the elderly Jerry mess hall worker, observed when Day stopped to thank him for his past kindness. "The entire atmosphere of this place has changed. Species that barely acknowledged each other are now working together in ways I have not seen before." But the most significant change came in a private message from Commander Kang, requesting a meeting in his quarters. When Day arrived, he found his uncle studying mission reports and academy performance records. Commander Kang looked up as Day entered, and for the first time there was unmistakable pride in his expression. "Sit down, nephew," he said warmly. "We have much to discuss." "Did I do something wrong during the mission?" Day asked, still worried about potential consequences. "On the contrary," Commander Kang replied. "You did everything exactly right. Better than right, actually. You improvised solutions that experienced officers would not have considered, and you led your team with natural authority." He activated a holographic display showing battle analysis from the rescue mission. "Your combat performance against Krexthul was particularly impressive. You defeated a warrior who had twice your mass and decades more experience, using techniques that turned his advantages into weaknesses. You taught me those techniques." "I taught you the basics," his uncle corrected. "But during that fight, you adapted and improvised in ways I never showed you. That came from your own instincts and determination." Commander Kang stood and moved to the window overlooking the academy's training areas. "Which brings me to an important decision you need to make." "What kind of decision?" "Your training here is nearly complete. Your academic performance is excellent. Your combat skills are among the best in your class, and you have proven yourself capable of leadership under extreme pressure." His uncle turned back to face him. "Several prestigious assignments are available to graduating cadets like yourself." He activated another display showing various military postings throughout the galaxy. The Nexari Third Fleet has requested you specifically, based on your mission performance. The Vorthak Empire has extended an unusual honor, inviting a human to serve in their royal guard. Even the Jerry Council has expressed interest in your tactical capabilities. Day studied the options with amazement. Any of these positions would represent incredible opportunities for a young officer, especially a human from a farming background. These are all wonderful honors, he said slowly. But I sense you have something else in mind. Commander Kang smiled. You are learning to read situations well. Yes, there is another option. Earth Defense Command is forming a new division specifically for protecting human colonies in the outer systems. It would be dangerous work, with limited resources and little glory, but it would be a chance to serve your own people directly. The choice was obvious to Day, though he took a moment to consider all the implications. I want to serve Earth Defense Command. I hoped you would say that, his uncle replied with satisfaction. Your mother made a similar choice when she chose to protect one small community instead of pursuing higher honors. It is a family tradition worth continuing. Over the following weeks, preparations for graduation consumed everyone's attention. The ceremony would be attended by dignitaries from across the galaxy, and cadets would receive their assignments in a formal ritual that marked the beginning of their military careers. But for Dai, the most meaningful moment came during a private ceremony in Training Room 7, where his secret education had taken place. Commander Kang presented him with his mother's military decorations, carefully preserved from her service years. These belonged to Lieutenant Kim So-young, his uncle said formally. She earned them through courage, dedication, and sacrifice in service of others. I believe she would want you to have them. Day accepted the decorations with trembling hands. Among them was a medal for heroic action in defense of civilians, earned during a mission remarkably similar to the recent rescue operation. She would be proud of you, Commander Kang continued, not because you became a great warrior, but because you chose to use your strength to protect those who needed protection. Will I see you again? Day asked. The galaxy is large, but our paths will cross, his uncle promised. And remember, you carry more than just your mother's medals. You carry the knowledge that humans are capable of extraordinary things when we embrace our true nature. The graduation ceremony was magnificent. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to honor the new officers and welcome them into galactic service. When Day's name was called, he walked across the stage to receive his commission with confidence and dignity. In the audience, Jin and Hana applauded enthusiastically. Both had chosen to serve with mixed species fleets, where their human perspectives would be valued and respected. Even some of the alien cadets who had once dismissed humans now watched with obvious respect. After the ceremony, as cadets prepared to depart for their new assignments, Kethmore approached Day one final time. I owe you an apology, the Vorthak Prince said formally. I judged humans by our standards instead of understanding your unique strengths. That was both ignorant and unworthy of a warrior. We all have things to learn about each other, Day replied, diplomatically. I hope our paths cross again under better circumstances. As he prepared to board the transport that would take him to Earth Defense Command headquarters, Day took one last look around Station Kepler. 6 months ago, he had arrived as a despised outcast, barely tolerated and widely expected to fail. Now he was departing as a respected graduate and commissioned officer. More importantly, he was leaving as someone who understood his own worth and the value of his heritage. The secret training with his uncle had taught him combat skills and tactical thinking, but the real lesson had been simpler and more profound. He did not need to be like other species to be valuable. He needed to be the best human he could be. The transport lifted away from the station, carrying Day toward his new assignment and new challenges. Through the viewport, he could see other ships heading in different directions, carrying his classmates to postings throughout the galaxy. His first command would be a small patrol vessel called the Earthborn, tasked with protecting human settlements on the frontier. The crew would be a mix of species, but they would all be volunteers who believed in Earth's growing role in galactic affairs. As the transport entered hyperspace, Day thought about the journey ahead. There would be new dangers, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove that humans belonged among the stars. But he was ready for whatever came next. He was no longer the despised Earth boy who had arrived at the Academy months ago. He was Kim Day, officer of the Galactic Defense Force, nephew of the legendary Reaper of Andromeda, and son of the hero Kim So-young. Most importantly, he was human. The emergency alarm cut through the morning silence like a knife. Day woke instantly, his body reacting to the sound before his mind fully understood what was happening. Around the station, cadets stumbled from their rooms in confusion. All personnel, report to emergency stations. The announcement echoed through the corridors. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. In the main assembly hall, Commander Velthera stood before a massive display showing a distant space station. The image was filled with smoke and flashing lights indicating severe damage. Civilian Station Beta 7 has been attacked by a terrorist group called the Liberation Front, she announced grimly. They have taken over 300 hostages, including several of our academy instructors who were conducting a conference. There. The display zoomed in to show the damaged station more clearly. Day could see that sections had been sealed off and that normal traffic around the facility had stopped completely. The terrorists are demanding the release of their imprisoned leaders and threatening to execute hostages if their demands are not met, Commander Velthera continued. Local security forces are overwhelmed, and the nearest military fleet is 6 hours away. She paused and looked across the assembled cadets and staff. Station Kepler has been ordered to assist in any way possible. Senior cadets may volunteer for support roles, but this is an extremely dangerous situation. After the briefing ended, cadets gathered in small groups to discuss the situation. Most seemed excited by the prospect of real action, though they clearly expected to play only minor support roles. Day found himself thinking about the hostages. Among them were instructors who had taught him, people who had been kind even when his performance was poor. The thought of them in danger made his chest feel tight with anger. That evening, instead of going to Training Room 7, Day went to his uncle's temporary quarters. Commander Kang had been in meetings all day with station leadership, planning the rescue operation. I expected you, his uncle said when Day arrived. You want to help with the rescue? Yes, sir. Those are our people being held. And what exactly do you think you can contribute? Commander Kang asked, his voice serious. You have been training for weeks, but this is not a simulation. Real people will die if we make mistakes. I know I am not ready for a full mission, Day said carefully. But there has to be something I can do. His uncle studied him for a long moment. There might be. The terrorist leader is a Vorthak warrior named Krex Thule. He was a military officer until he was dishonorably discharged for attacking civilians. Our intelligence shows he has been planning this attack for months. Commander Kang activated a holographic display showing the station's layout and the terrorists' positions. The official rescue plan calls for a direct assault by experienced officers. It is a good plan, but it will likely result in significant casualties among both rescuers and hostages. What is the alternative? A small infiltration team could potentially neutralize the terrorists before they realize they are under attack, his uncle explained. But it would require people who can move undetected and think creatively under pressure. Day understood what his uncle was suggesting. You want to use cadets. Not cadets, Commander Kang corrected. Volunteers who understand that this mission has no official authorization. If you are caught, the Academy will deny any knowledge of your actions. If you fail, you will likely face court-martial. Who else would go? I have spoken privately with Park Jin and Lee Hana. They have agreed to volunteer, though they do not fully understand what they are committing to. The thought of working with his fellow humans was both encouraging and concerning. Day had grown closer to them as his performance improved, but he was not sure how they would react under real pressure. What would the mission involve? Commander Kang manipulated the holographic display to show a detailed route through the damaged station. Intelligence reports indicate that the terrorists have sealed most access points, but missed several maintenance shafts that connect to the ventilation system. A small team could potentially use those passages to reach the main hostage area undetected. And then you would need to disable the guards and free the hostages before reinforcements arrive, his uncle said simply. It sounds straightforward, but everything that can go wrong probably will. Day studied the mission plan using the tactical thinking his uncle had taught him. The route was dangerous and complex, requiring the team to move through damaged areas where life support might fail. The final assault would depend on perfect timing and coordination. Why are you offering this to me? Day asked. You could send experienced officers. Because this mission requires people who can improvise and adapt when plans fail, Commander Kang explained. It requires humans who understand that sometimes the impossible is the only option available. I will do it. His uncle nodded as if he had expected that answer. Then we begin immediate preparation. You have 4 hours to learn everything about the station layout, the terrorist positions, and your teammates' capabilities. The next few hours passed in intense briefings and equipment preparation. Day met with Jin and Hana in a secure room where they reviewed blueprints, studied enemy positions, and planned their approach. This is insane, Jin said after seeing the mission details. We are students, not special forces soldiers. That is exactly why it might work, Hana replied. They will not expect cadets to attempt something this dangerous. Day found himself naturally taking charge of the planning, using the strategic lessons his uncle had taught him. He identified weaknesses in the terrorist defenses and suggested approach routes that minimized their exposure. How do you know so much about tactical planning? Jin asked with surprise. I have been studying extra materials, Day said, which was becoming his standard response to such questions. As they prepared their equipment, Day felt the familiar nervousness of facing a test he might not pass. But underneath the fear was something new. Confidence. Not the false confidence of someone pretending to be brave, but the steady assurance of someone who had trained for exactly this type of challenge. The journey to Station Beta 7 took 2 hours in a fast courier ship. During the flight, the 3 human cadets made final preparations and reviewed their plan one more time. Remember, Day told his teammates, once we enter the station, we are committed. There will be no backup coming. If we get in trouble. Are you sure about this? Jin asked nervously. We could still turn back. People are counting on us, Hana said firmly. I did not come this far to quit now. When they reached the damaged station, the sight was worse than the images had shown. Entire sections were dark and venting atmosphere into space. Emergency lights flickered weakly in areas that still had power. Entry point is here, Day said, checking his scanner. Life support in the maintenance areas is functioning, but barely. We need to move fast. They put on their environmental suits and prepared to transfer to the station. As they made final checks, Day thought about his mother and uncle, about the long nights of training and about the hostages who were depending on people they had never met. Let's go save some lives, he said, and opened the airlock door. The maintenance shaft was cramped and dark, barely wide enough for one person to crawl through. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows, and the sound of their breathing seemed unnaturally loud in the confined space. As they moved toward their target, Day felt his training take over. His body moved efficiently through the narrow passages, while his mind tracked their position and planned the final approach. Behind him, Jin and Hana followed quietly, trusting his navigation. When they reached the observation point overlooking the main hostage area, Day felt his heart sink. The situation was worse than intelligence had suggested. The terrorists had divided the hostages into 3 groups and positioned guards with clear fields of fire. Any direct assault would result in casualties. But as he studied the scene below, Day began to see possibilities that the original rescue plan had missed. The terrorist positions were strong against conventional attack, but they had been designed to stop enemies coming through the main entrances. There, he whispered to his teammates, pointing to a pattern in the terrorist positions. They are protecting against assault from the corridors, but they have blind spots above and below. Jin squinted through the observation port. I don't see any way to exploit that. The ventilation system connects to the lower level, Day explained quietly. If we can create a distraction up here, draw their attention, Someone could approach the hostages from below. That's still 3 groups of guards, Hana pointed out. Even with a distraction, we cannot handle them all simultaneously. Day studied the situation more carefully, applying everything his uncle had taught him about reading opponents and finding weaknesses. The guards were Vorthak, Jerry, and mixed species groups. Each had different reaction patterns and capabilities. We don't fight them all at once, he said finally. We use their own strengths against them. He pointed to the Vorthak guards. Crystal beings conduct vibrations. If we can create the right frequency resonance in the station's structure, their enhanced hearing will become painful, maybe even disabling. How do we create that frequency? Jin asked. The station's power system, Day replied. If we overload certain circuits in sequence, The secret training sessions became the center of Day's life. Every night after the other cadets went to their rooms, he met his uncle in training room 7. What happened there was unlike anything taught at the academy. Commander Kang did not believe in gentle instruction. On the first night, he had Day run until his legs shook, then immediately began combat drills. When Day complained that he was too tired, his uncle's response was simple. Enemies will not wait for you to feel ready, he said. Learn to fight when you are exhausted, scared, and overwhelmed. That is when real battles are won or lost. The training was brutal and strange. Instead of the clean, precise techniques taught in regular classes, Commander Kang showed Dai dirty fighting methods, how to use an opponent's strength against them, how to strike at weak points that other species did not expect humans to know about. The Vorthak have crystal skin that is nearly unbreakable, his uncle explained, while demonstrating on a practice dummy. But crystal conducts vibrations. Hit them at the right frequency, and their own armor becomes a weakness. He showed Day how to create that vibration using human fighting techniques. It required precise timing and understanding of physics, things that were not taught in normal combat classes. The Jerry depend on reading thoughts and emotions, Commander Kang continued. But humans can learn to control their mental state, to think one thing while doing another. Night after night, Dai learned meditation techniques that helped him quiet his mind. At first, it seemed impossible. His thoughts jumped around like frightened animals. But gradually, he began to understand how to focus his thinking. The Nexari are faster and stronger than humans, his uncle said during another session. But they are used to fighting opponents who match their speed. They do not know how to handle someone who changes rhythm constantly. Day learned to fight in patterns that made no sense to alien thinking. Fast, then slow, then fast again. Aggressive attacks followed by sudden retreats. It felt chaotic and wrong, but his uncle insisted it was the most human way to fight. Other species fight like machines, Commander Kang explained. They have optimal strategies and stick to them. Humans fight like storms. We change direction, without warning, and strike where no one expects. The physical training was only part of his education. Commander Kang also taught strategy and leadership using lessons from his own battles. During the Centauri campaign, I faced a Nexari fleet that outnumbered my ships 5-1, he told Day one night. Their commanders were more experienced. Their technology was superior and they had every advantage. How did you win? Day asked. I did something they could not predict because it made no logical sense. I split my small fleet into even smaller groups and attacked them from 12 different directions at once. Commander Kang showed battle recordings on a holographic display. Day watched the tiny human ships dart between much larger alien vessels like insects around giants. Any reasonable commander would have kept their fleet together for maximum firepower, his uncle continued. But humans are not always reasonable. We take crazy risks that work because the enemy cannot believe anyone would be that foolish. But what if the risk had failed? Then I would have lost quickly instead of losing slowly, Commander Kang said with a slight smile. Sometimes the choice is not between winning and losing. It is between losing with honor and losing without even trying. As the weeks passed, Day began to notice changes in himself. His endurance improved dramatically. Where he had once become exhausted after a few minutes of combat simulation, he could now fight for hours. His reflexes sharpened, and his thinking became clearer under pressure. More importantly, he began to see the academy differently. During regular classes, he watched the other cadets with new understanding. He noticed how the Vorthak Prince Kethmore became frustrated when his direct approach failed. He saw how the Jerry students panicked when forced to work alone. He observed how the Nexari like Vel 9 made perfect plans but could not adapt when things went wrong. "You are learning," his uncle noted during one of their sessions. "I can see it in how you move, how you watch others. You are beginning to think like a human warrior instead of a failed alien." Day's performance in regular classes began to improve, though he was careful to make the changes gradual. He did not want to attract attention by suddenly becoming excellent at everything. Instead, he allowed his scores to climb slowly and steadily. The improvement was most noticeable in combat simulations. Where he had once been overwhelmed by superior alien abilities, he now found ways to turn those abilities into disadvantages. When facing a strong Vorthak opponent, he would strike quickly at joints and weak points, then retreat before the counterattack. Against telepathic Jerry, he used the meditation techniques to cloud his thoughts while his body followed trained responses. His fellow human cadets, Jin and Hana, began to notice the changes. "You seem different lately," Hana observed during a break between classes. "More confident." "Maybe I am just getting used to being here," Dai replied carefully. Jin nodded. "Your combat scores have improved a lot. What have you been doing differently?" "Just practicing more," Dai said, which was technically true, but he could see doubt in their eyes. Both Jin and Hana had noticed that his improvement was not just gradual, it was fundamental. He moved differently, thought differently, carried himself differently. The alien cadets noticed too, though their reactions varied. Some, like Vel 9, seemed curious about the change in the human they had previously dismissed. Others, like Kethmore, appeared concerned that their assumptions about human weakness might be wrong. "How does the farming boy suddenly become competent?" the Vorthak prince asked loudly during one combat session. "Perhaps Earth has methods they have not shared with the Academy." Commander Velthara, the Nexari instructor, reviewed Dai's recent performance with obvious puzzlement. "Your improvement is significant, Cadet Kim. What additional training have you been pursuing?" "I have been studying the Academy materials more carefully, sir," Dai answered. "And I have been focusing on understanding my opponents instead of just trying to match their strengths." It was another technically true answer, but Dai could see that the instructor suspected there was more to the story. That evening, during his secret training session, Dai mentioned the growing attention. "It is inevitable," Commander Kang said, while adjusting Dai's fighting stance. "Excellence cannot be hidden forever, but remember, the goal is not to hide your abilities. It is to develop them properly before others try to interfere." "What do you mean?" "Political rivals, jealous classmates, instructors who do not want their assumptions challenged," his uncle explained. "Once you become too noticeable, people will start asking questions, making demands, creating obstacles." He stepped back and took a fighting stance. "That is why we must accelerate your training. Tonight, we begin the advanced lessons." "Advanced lessons?" Commander Kang smiled in a way that made Dai nervous. "Everything we have done so far was preparation. Now you learn what made me the Reaper of Andromeda." The training that followed was unlike anything Dai had experienced. His uncle taught him to use his human intuition to predict enemy movements, not through telepathy like the Jerry, but through understanding psychology and body language. He learned to endure pain and keep fighting when injury would stop other species. Most importantly, he learned to use his emotions as weapons instead of weaknesses. Anger could fuel strength when controlled properly. Fear could sharpen focus and speed reactions. Even sadness could be used to understand sacrifice and make difficult decisions. Other species try to eliminate emotion from combat, Commander Kang explained. They see feelings as interference with logical thinking, but humans evolved to use emotion and logic together. That combination makes us unpredictable and dangerous. By the end of the session, Dai was exhausted but exhilarated. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt like he truly belonged among the cadets. "How much longer will the training take?" he asked as they cleaned up the equipment. "That depends on you," his uncle replied. "But soon you will." Face a test that I cannot help you with. A situation where you must prove yourself not just to the Academy, but to the galaxy. What kind of test? Commander Kang paused at the door, his expression serious. The kind that shows whether you have truly learned what it means to be human. Day could barely focus on his classes the next day. Every few minutes his mind returned to the impossible conversation with Commander Kang, his uncle. The thought still seemed too strange to believe. During combat training he performed even worse than usual. His distraction was obvious to everyone, including the instructors. Cadet Kim seems to be somewhere else today, Commander Velthara observed coldly. Perhaps he should return to Earth if he cannot concentrate on his duties. The other cadet snickered quietly. Keth Moore made a comment in the Vorthak language that caused several aliens to laugh. Dave felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he tried to push through the rest of the day. Evening meal felt endless. Dave sat alone as usual, picking at his food while watching the clock. Finally, the dining period ended, and cadets began returning to their rooms or study areas. Day made his way through the station's corridors to Training Room 7. The room was one of the smaller practice spaces, used for individual combat drills. When he entered, he found Commander Kang waiting for him. His uncle had changed from his formal uniform into simple training clothes. Without the military decorations and authority symbols, he looked more like a normal person, but his eyes still held that sharp intelligence that seemed to see everything. Close the door and activate the privacy screen, Commander Kang instructed. What we discuss tonight must remain between us. Day followed the instructions. The room's windows became dark, and a soft humming indicated that no one could see or hear inside. Sit, his uncle said, settling cross-legged on the floor. Before we begin your real education, you need to understand your mother's story. Day sat down across from him, eager to learn about the mother he had barely known. So Young was 3 years younger than me, Commander Kang began. We grew up on Earth, in a family that had served in the military for generations. Our parents expected both of us to become officers. He activated a small device and holographic images appeared in the air around them. Day saw pictures of his mother as a young woman in military training, then as an officer on various ships and stations. She was brilliant, his uncle continued. Better at strategy than most generals and fearless in battle. She could have commanded fleets by the time she was 30. What changed? Day asked. She met your father during a supply mission to Earth. He was just a farmer helping to load grain onto our transport ships. But So Young saw something in him that impressed her more than all the military heroes she had known. More images appeared, showing his parents together. His mother looked happy in a way Day had never seen in the few pictures his family owned. She resigned her commission to marry him, Commander Kang said. Our parents were furious. They said she was throwing away her potential for a simple man and a simple life. Were they right? Day asked quietly. His uncle smiled sadly. When the raiders attacked your town, your mother organized the entire defense. She turned farmers and shopkeepers into soldiers in a matter of hours. She held them off until help arrived, saving over 200 people. The images changed to show battle records and official reports. Dee read his mother's name mentioned again and again as the person who had coordinated the successful defense. She died protecting others, Commander Kang continued, just like she had always done as an officer. But this time, she was protecting her home, her family, her choice of how to live. Day felt tears building in his eyes. He had always known his mother died defending their town, but he had never understood how much she had given up to be there. Why didn't she tell me about you, about her military service? Because she wanted you to choose your own path, his uncle explained. If you had grown up knowing you were the nephew of the Reaper of Andromeda, every decision would have been influenced by that knowledge. You would have felt pressure to live up to my reputation instead of discovering your own strength. But I don't have any strength, Day protested. I'm failing at everything here. Commander Kang leaned forward, his expression serious. That is because you are trying to be something you are not. You watch the Vorthak and try to be as strong as them. You watch the Jerry and try to think like them. You watch the Nexari and try to be as precise as them. Isn't that what I should do? No. His uncle's voice was firm. You should learn to be the best human you can be. And humans, nephew, have advantages that other species do not understand. He stood up and began pacing around the room. The Vorthak are strong, but they are rigid. They think in straight lines and cannot adapt when their plans fail. The Jerry are telepathic, but they depend on their mental connection so much that they panic when forced to act alone. The Nexari are precise, but they cannot handle chaos or unexpected situations. What about humans? Humans are survivors, Commander Kang said with pride. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to adapt, to think creatively, to never give up no matter how hopeless things seemed. He stopped pacing and looked directly at Day. Your mother proved that when she turned farmers into warriors. I proved it when I defeated fleets that outnumbered me 10-1. And you will prove it too once you stop trying to be an alien and start being human. How do I do that? By training the way humans have always trained. Through hardship, through failure, through getting back up every time you are knocked down. Commander Kang moved to an equipment locker and pulled out simple training weapons and protective gear. The Academy teaches combat through simulation and theory. I am going to teach you the way our ancestors learned on Earth, through sweat and pain and repetition. He tossed a padded training sword to Day. But first, you need to understand something important. I cannot openly acknowledge you as my nephew. If my enemies knew about you, they would try to use you against me. You would become a target. I understand, Day said, though the thought of remaining a secret disappointment was painful. However, his uncle continued, I can provide special training to a cadet who shows potential. As far as anyone else knows, I noticed something interesting about your approach to problems and decided to mentor you personally. He picked up his own training sword and took a fighting stance. This training will be harder than anything the Academy has put you through. You will be bruised, exhausted, and frustrated. Some nights you will want to quit and go back to Earth. I won't quit, Day said firmly. Good. But remember this above all else. Commander Kang's expression became serious. The goal is not to make you into me. It is to help you become the best version of yourself. Your mother chose her own path and became a hero in her own way. You must do the same. With that, he attacked without warning. Day barely got his sword up in time to block the strike. The impact sent vibrations up his arms and he stumbled backward. Lesson 1, his uncle said calmly. Humans do not wait for permission to defend themselves. For the next hour, Day was knocked down, bruised and thoroughly defeated. But each time he fell, he got back up. Each time he failed, he tried again. Better, Commander Kang said at the end of the session. You are starting to move like someone who refuses to stay down. As they put away the equipment, Day felt something he had not experienced since arriving at the Academy. Hope. Tomorrow night, same time, his uncle said. And Day? Start paying attention to how the other species react when their advantages are taken away. Watch for their weaknesses, not just their strengths. Yes, sir. And nephew? Commander Kang paused at the door. Your mother would be proud of you, not because you might become a great warrior, but because you chose to keep trying when everything seemed impossible. After his uncle left, Day sat alone in the training room for a long time. He thought about his mother, about the family legacy he had never known existed, and about the long, difficult path ahead of him. But for the first time since arriving at the Academy, he did not feel alone. The news spread through Station Kepler like fire. Commander Kang Woo-jin was coming to inspect the Academy. Even the instructors, who usually remained calm and professional, seemed nervous as they prepared for his arrival. Day had heard the name before. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Reaper of Andromeda. Commander Kang was the human who had ended 3 major wars through brilliant strategy and incredible combat skills. Stories about him were told on every world where humans lived. Some said he could defeat an entire enemy squad alone. Others claimed he could predict enemy movements before they made them. My father met him once, Jin whispered during combat class. He said Commander Kang has eyes like winter storms, cold and deadly. Hana nodded seriously. My uncle served under him during the Centauri campaign. He told me that enemy fleets would surrender just by hearing his name over the communications. Even the alien cadet spoke of Commander Kang with respect mixed with fear. The Vorthak Prince Kethmore, who usually acted superior to all humans, became quiet when discussing the legendary commander. He is the only human the Vorthak Empire considers a true warrior, Kethmore admitted reluctantly. Our generals study his tactics in their war colleges. Vel 9, the brilliant Nixari student, pulled up holographic displays showing Commander Kang's most famous battles. His strategic thinking is beyond normal human capacity. Some of our scientists believe he might be genetically enhanced. Day listened to all the stories and felt even smaller than usual. Here was proof that humans could be great warriors and leaders, but that only made his own failures seem worse. If Commander Kang represented the best of humanity, then Day represented the worst. The day of the inspection arrived with unusual excitement. The station's lights seemed brighter, and every surface had been cleaned until it sparkled. Instructors wore their best uniforms, and cadets stood in perfect formations. Day positioned himself in the back row, hoping to remain invisible. He did not want the greatest human warrior to see him as an example of his species' weakness. The main assembly hall could hold 1,000 people, but it felt completely silent as they waited. Then the doors opened and Commander Kang Woo-jin walked inside. He was not what Day expected. The commander was not unusually tall or muscular. He looked like he could be someone's father or uncle. His hair was black with some gray at the temples, and his face showed lines from years of responsibility. But when he moved, there was something different about him. He walked like a predator that knew it was the most dangerous thing in the room. His uniform was simple and practical, without the decorations that other high-ranking officers wore. But everyone in the room seemed to lean away from him slightly, as if his presence carried its own weight. Commander Kang's eyes swept across the assembled cadets. For just a moment, his gaze stopped on Day. The look lasted only a second, but Day felt like those dark eyes saw everything about him. Then the commander continued his inspection. "You represent the future of galactic defense," Commander Kang said. His voice was quiet, but it carried easily through the large room. "Some of you will become fleet commanders. Others will lead ground forces or protect civilian populations. All of you will face moments when lives depend on your decisions." He paused and looked around the room again. Excellence is not about being the strongest or the fastest. It is about refusing to quit when everything seems impossible. It is about finding solutions when others see only problems. After the ceremony, cadets returned to their normal routines. But the atmosphere remained different. Everyone tried harder, in their classes, hoping to impress the legendary commander who was somewhere on the station. That evening, Day was studying alone in his room when his door chimed. He opened it expecting to see another cadet or maybe an instructor. Instead, he found himself face to face with Commander Kang Woo-jin. For a moment, Day could not speak. The most famous human in the galaxy was standing in his doorway, looking at him with those sharp, intelligent eyes. "Cadet Kim," the commander said calmly. "May I come in?" Day stepped aside quickly, his heart beating fast. Commander Kang entered the small room and looked around. His presence seemed to fill the entire space. "Sit down," the commander said, not unkindly. "You look like you might fall over." Day sat on his bed, still unable to believe this was happening. Commander Kang took the chair at the desk and turned it to face him. "I have been reading your academic files," the commander said. "Your scores are concerning." Day felt his face grow hot with shame. "I know, sir. I am trying to improve." "Are you?" Commander Kang leaned forward slightly. "Or are you trying to become something you are not?" The question confused Day. "I don't understand, sir." "Tell me about your family." Cadet Kim. The change of subject surprised Day, but he answered honestly. He spoke about his parents' farm, about growing crops and caring for animals. He talked about his small hometown where everyone knew each other. As he spoke, he watched Commander Kang's face for signs of disappointment or disgust. Instead, he saw something unexpected. The commander's hard expression softened slightly, and his eyes seemed distant, as if remembering something from long ago. "Your mother," Commander Kang said, quietly. "What was her name?" "Kim So-young, sir. She died when I was 12. Raiders attacked our town and she helped defend the children until the Planetary Defense Force arrived." Commander Kang was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his uniform and pulled out a small device. He activated it, and a holographic image appeared in the air between them. The image showed a young woman in a military uniform. She had kind eyes but a determined expression. She looked exactly like Dae's mother, but younger. "This is Lieutenant Kim So-young," Commander Kang said softly. "She was one of the bravest officers I ever knew. She was also my sister." Dae stared at the image, then at Commander Kang, his mind struggling to understand. "Your sister? But that means you are my nephew," Commander Kang said simply. "I have been looking for you for 5 years." The room seemed to spin around Dae. The legendary commander, the Reaper of Andromeda, was his uncle. His mother had been a military officer, not just a simple farmer's wife. "She never told me," Dae whispered. "She was protecting you, Commander," Kang explained. "So-young left the military to marry your father and live a peaceful life. She wanted you to have a choice about your future, free from the expectations that come with our family name." Dae touched the pendant around his neck, the one his mother had given him. For the first time he noticed that it was not just simple metal. There were tiny symbols carved into it. "The family crest," Commander Kang said, noticing his gesture. "That is how I recognized you in the assembly hall." "Why are you telling me this now?" Dae asked. Commander Kang stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars filled the darkness of space. "Because you are failing, and I think I know why. You are trying to be like them." He gestured toward where the other cadets' rooms would be. "But your strength does not come from being like other species. It comes from being human." He turned back to Dae. "Your mother understood that. She could have been a general, but she chose to protect one small town instead. That choice saved dozens of lives, including yours." "I don't feel strong," Dae said honestly. "I feel weak and stupid compared to everyone else here." "Good," Commander Kang said, surprising him. "Feeling weak makes you careful. Feeling stupid makes you think harder. These feelings are not weaknesses, nephew. They are the beginning of wisdom." The commander moved toward the door, then stopped. "Tomorrow night, meet me in training room, 7 after evening meal. Come alone and tell no one." "What are we going to do?" Dae asked. Commander Kang smiled, and for the first time, he looked less like a legendary warrior and more like family. "We are going to teach you what it really means to be human." Kim Dae pressed his face against the cold window of the transport ship. Through the thick glass, he could see Station Kepler floating in the darkness of space. The massive structure looked like a metal city among the stars. Its lights blinked, in perfect patterns, and ships moved around it like tiny insects. His stomach felt tight with worry. In just a few hours, he would step inside that station and begin his training at the Galactic Military Academy. He was one of only 3 humans, accepted this year. Back on Earth, everyone called him lucky. His parents cried with joy when the acceptance letter arrived. His neighbors threw a big party in their small farming town. But now, looking at the advanced station before him, Dae did not feel lucky at all. The transport ship shook gently as it connected to the station. Around him, other young aliens prepared to leave. Dae watched them with quiet amazement. There were tall, crystal-like beings called Vorthak. Their skin looked like living diamonds, and they moved with smooth grace. The Jerry had large, glowing eyes and seemed to speak to each other without words. The Nexari looked almost human, but their skin was silver and they wore clothes that seemed to glow with their own light. Then there were the humans. Dae saw 2 others like himself. Park Jin was tall and wore expensive clothes that looked brand new. His family owned mining operations on 3 different planets. Lee Hana came from a military family on Mars. Her uniform was perfect and she carried herself like a soldier already. Day looked down at his own clothes. His uniform was his older brother's hand-me-down from the Planetary Defense Force. The fabric was faded in some places, and the boots were old but clean. His equipment bag was made of simple cloth, not the advanced materials the other cadets carried. The transport door opened with a soft hiss. One by one, the new cadets walked out into the station. Day followed at the back of the group, trying to stay invisible. The inside of Station Kepler was even more impressive than the outside. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of white metal that glowed softly. Floating displays showed information in dozens of different languages. The air smelled clean and felt perfectly cool. A tall Nexari officer waited for them. Her silver skin reflected the station's lights, and her voice was clear and strong. "Welcome to the Galactic Military Academy," she said. "I am Commander Velthara. You are the best young minds from across the galaxy. You are here because your species believes you have what it takes to serve in the Galactic Defense Force." She began calling names and assigning rooms. When she called Kim Day, several alien cadets turned to look at him. He could see the question in their eyes. What was a human from Earth doing here? Day's room was small and basic. It had a bed, a desk, and a small window that looked out into space. He put his few belongings in the metal closet and sat on the bed. The mattress was thin but clean. A soft knock came at his door. When he opened it, he found Park Jin and Lee Hana standing outside. "We wanted to introduce ourselves properly," Jin said with a friendly smile. "We're the 3 humans this year." Hana nodded. "We should stick together. The other species can be difficult." They talked for a few minutes, but Day could tell they were not really comfortable with him. Jin's expensive clothes and confident manner made it clear he came from wealth. Hana spoke like someone who had grown up around military officers. When they learned that Day's parents were farmers on Earth, their smiles became polite but distant. "Well, we should let you get settled," Jin said after a pause. "See you in class tomorrow." After they left, Day felt more alone than ever. The next morning, classes began. The academy was unlike any school Day had ever seen. Lessons took place in rooms that could change their shape and appearance. For history class, the walls became windows showing ancient battles in space. For science, they stood inside the heart of a star to learn how it worked. But the advanced teaching methods only made Day feel more out of place. The other cadets seemed to understand everything easily. They had grown up with technology that was still new on Earth. When the instructor asked questions, alien hands shot up immediately. The Vorthak Prince, Keth Moore, answered with perfect confidence. The Nexari student called Vel 9 solved complex problems without even looking up from his desk. When Day tried to answer a question, his words came out slowly and uncertain. Some of the alien cadets made quiet sounds that might have been laughter in their languages. The worst part was combat training. The academy used advanced simulation rooms where cadets fought against computer enemies. The aliens moved like they were born for war. The Vorthak were incredibly strong and tough. The Jerry could sense where attacks were coming from before they happened. The Nexari were fast and precise. Day stumbled through each simulation, always finishing last. His human reflexes felt slow and clumsy compared to the natural advantages of other species. Perhaps Earth made an error in their selection process, Kethmore said loudly after one particularly bad performance. His crystal skin caught the light as he looked down at Day. Some species are simply not meant for military service. Other cadets agreed quietly. Even Jin and Hana looked embarrassed to be associated with him. The instructors were polite but clearly disappointed. Commander Velthara reviewed his scores with a frown. "Cadet Kim, your academic work is acceptable, but your practical skills need significant improvement. The academy has high standards." Days turned into weeks. Day's scores remained at the bottom of every class ranking. He ate meals alone while other cadets formed groups based on their species or abilities. The whispers followed him everywhere he went. Why did they even accept him? Humans think they belong among the advanced species. It's embarrassing to watch. The only kindness came from an unexpected source. Keeper Loth was an elderly Jerry who worked in the mess hall. His large eyes held wisdom and gentleness. When Day sat alone at meals, Loth would quietly add extra food to his plate. Growth requires proper nutrition, Loth would say in his soft voice. And some growth takes longer than others. One evening, Day stood at his window looking out at the stars. In the distance, he could see Earth's sun, just a tiny point of light among millions. He held a small metal pendant that had belonged to his mother. It was the only valuable thing his family owned, and she had given it to him before she died. He thought about going home. His parents would understand. They would welcome him back to the farm with love and support. He could live a simple, quiet life growing crops and raising animals. But something inside him refused to give up. His mother had always told him that the strongest steel was forged in the hottest fire. Maybe his struggles here meant he was becoming something stronger. Day closed his hand around the pendant and made a decision. Tomorrow he would try again, and the day after that, and every day until he either succeeded or was forced to leave. He did not know that somewhere else on the station, someone was watching him with great interest, someone who recognized the pendant he wore and the stubborn determination in his eyes.